Welcome to QGIS beginners tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to cover the overview of QGIS interface, working with vector data in QGIS, installing additional plugins in QGIS, and the plugin we are going to install here is the OSM plugin that allows us to add an OpenStreetMap. And then we will also do creating a new vector data. This actually creating a new shapefile. And then we'll also do some styling and exporting these vector files. And then we'll also do working with raster images, and we will be done with this tutorial. So I am in my QGIS interface. So if you are seeing QGIS for the first time, it will prompt you to create a new project somewhere here. Once you click that, you will be able to see all this. So for some reason, maybe you may not be able to see all these panels. Let me just uncheck them. Maybe you are seeing something that is like that. Maybe everything is just white here. There's a way of bringing them back by just coming to the tab on view, and then panels. Ensure you have browser. Browser is the panel that was here. It allows you to navigate to the folder where you have saved your work, your shape files, and you can be able to easily add them using just the method of drag and drop. For example, I can drag a shape file here and drop it. This shape file is actually saved in it is actually saved in my computer. So by just dragging it and dropping it, I will be able to add it to my interface, and you can see the shape file is right there with me. Okay, so the next thing is a tab which is actually called layers. So these actually layers. So let me check layers. So layers allows you to visualize the number of data that has been added, the number of layers that have been added to your interface. I can see I added these 3 times, so they appeared thrice. So let me just remove these layers because I added them 3 times. So you can see right now I have a layer on boundary. I can uncheck it from here and then check it if I maybe want it to disappear, if it is obstructing something. So I can be able to do that. So the next thing I need to add is a tabs that were here. We have a geoprocessing tab. So layer again, sorry, view, and then panels, and then there's a processing toolbox. And then that toolbox contains all the toolboxes that are necessary in styling here. I mean, when you are working with QGIS. Again, you can add as many panels as possible. Mostly this also will come, search QMS will also come. And again, any other tab, if you don't find it, that is where you can add it. Same case to toolbars. If you don't see toolbars in your interface, toolbars are here. So they will be moving from this corner horizontally like that. So for some reason, if you don't see any toolbar, just come to toolbars, ensure the attributes is checked. Mostly that one should be there by default, data source, and all these other toolboxes. I mean, if you just want to use one toolbox and you don't find it, just come to the toolbar here and check it, okay? So that is a bit of interface of QGIS. So let us jump to vector data in QGIS. So I have a vector data added already. These are vector data we added. And now I can see this is standing on my way, so I'll just remove them so that we can have a big space for visualization. So these are actually a vector data I have, and our vector data in QGIS are not different from the ones we have in ArcGIS. They are actually .shp, shapefile, and if you navigate to this folder in your desktop, in your computer, you realize that there are so many under boundary.shp. They could be many. Let me just navigate there very fast. So that is actually desktop shapefiles. So shapefiles, and you can see under that boundary, we have so many boundaries here. We have a .dbf, .prg, and .sbn, but by default, it will just open one, which is relevant in QGIS, and this is actually a .shp. So the others will kind of disappear. You'll not be able to see them. Okay, so that is a shapefile I have already created. What if now you want to create your own shapefile? Okay, so what if you would want to create your own new vectors? Okay, so before we create our own new vectors, let us create vectors using actually, let us digitize these shapefiles using some map, and then we can be able to draw them by just tracing the map, from a map. So if I was to add something like an OpenStreetMap here in QGIS, how would I do that? So to be able to add an OpenStreetMap, you need to come and install a plugin. So just come to plugin, manage plugin, and search for a plugin called Quick Map Services. So just come to the search and search for Quick Map Services. I have it installed here. So it will not be difficult to install. Once you have searched for it, you will be able to see something saying install plugin here. So once you click there, it should install, and then you will be able to see it in your list for the installed programs. You can see it is already here, Quick Map Services. So once that is installed, you can just close that, come to web, Quick Map Services will appear there. And here I can add an OSM, which is actually an OpenStreetMap. I will add a standard one. And you can see that OpenStreetMap actually has just added in my working space. And you can see now this place is somewhere in Kayole, in Kenya, Nairobi. So if I was to make these maybe somehow transparent so that it does not obstruct my work. So how would I do that? So let me see how I would make this one more transparent. So simple fill, come here, fill color, and then I select transparent fill. And then once I have selected that, I just apply and then say okay. So it is now hollow, and it is very easy to see that actually this place lies somewhere in Kayole, in Nairobi. So these are an OpenStreetMap, and the reason I added it, apart from for you guys to understand about the OSM, is for us to be able to create our own shapefile. So what if we want to create a shapefile along here as well, rather than using these existing shapefiles? So how would you do that? To create a shapefile, just come to layer, create layer, new shapefile layer. So just click new shapefile layer. You can call it the way you want. So I will call this one Kayole. I will just navigate to the place where I want it to be saved to desktop, and then shapefiles, and then I will call this one Kayole, and then it should be an Esri shapefile type, and then I will click save, and then file encoding is that UTF-8. Geometric type, this time I want a polygon, so I'll select actually polygon because I want to draw a polygon. If I was to draw a line, I would select something like a multi-point line stream. If I was to do a point again, I would just select a point. So I want a polygon in this case, so I select a polygon. And then you can see the coordinate reference system here is actually WGS 1984. I can select any other I want from here, but I'll just keep that one because this is the one we use here. So, and then I can create a new field here. By the way, QGIS allows you to create a new field for your attributes table when you're creating a shapefile, which is very interesting. So for example, you can see by default, we have some field with an ID, a column on ID, integer, and length. If I was to do my own, let me just remove this one. I want this one to be maybe something like ID also, and then this one should be a whole number, and then length 10. So I will just add that to the list. So you can see we have ID, and then it is type integer, and then it is length 10. I can add another field, maybe let's say a field like maybe something like name. Yeah, so I'm just thinking of a field here. So name is type text, and then length you can just keep it is 100, and then maybe just to be safe. And then I can also add another field. Let's say maybe this field could be something like count, which will be actually a count will be a whole number. Let me just call this just thinking of something that will be relevant. So let me just call that location. Let me just call it location. So it will be a text, and then length 100. I can add it to the list, and you can see it has added those 3 columns. So I'll just click OK here. And once that has been added, Kayole, once I right click on it and open the attributes table, you can see those ID, name, and location have actually added as columns. And this is more interesting when you start drawing over here. So if I was to start drawing, I can just come here, right click, and then come to toggle editing. So it will open an editor here. And then with this editor open, I can select here to toggle it on and off. So that allows me to toggle on and off. So I'll click this button here for add polygon, and you can see now my cursor has changed. Now the normal way you do for tracing shape files is the same way we will do here. I will not be very accurate. I will just draw very fast because I believe you'll be able to do it on your own once you are done drawing this. So this is going to be around up to that point. So once you are done, once you are close to the end, you can right click. And once you right click, it allows you to add now feature attributes here for Kayole. And then you can see it is actually adding to the ID, the name, and also to the location. These are actually the columns we have in our shapefile here for Kayole attributes table. So the ID, I'll just give it maybe something like something random. I just thought an ID could be some unique attributes that identify that place. Maybe let me just give it 047. So that is the code for Nairobi. So because it is Kayole, let me just give it slash maybe something like a 047. Maybe no, let me just use 047. So that is the code for Nairobi. I'm not sure the code for Kayole. Should be inside Nairobi, but we just use this one for the purpose of illustration. So the name is actually Kayole Central, and then location is actually in Nairobi. So it is in Nairobi, and then I can click OK here, and then you can see that shapefile has been added. And if I was to open the attributes table from here, if I was to open, you can see the ID is 47. It is Kayole Central, and it is located in Nairobi. So I can be able to change all these options here, like I could put Nairobi, a capital letter for Nairobi there. So I can do that. I can continue adding data to my attributes table as I continue adding new shapefiles. So I can do that. So you can see now how you can create your own shapefile. We have just created our own shapefile. So once that shapefile has been created, we can just come here and click Save Layer Edits. And then once the layer edits are saved, we can just stop editing and jump down to start editing another layer, and so on and so forth. So that is how we create a new vector. So we have discussed about a plugin for OSM, and then we are now on new vector. So the next thing we need to speak about is styling. So to style up, you just need to open the properties panel here. So you can style it up by giving it a color. So I could give it some color like that, the color that would be relevant to my model in this case. I could also style it by giving it some labels as well. So when I come to labels, I select single labels here. I can style it by giving it some labels. Maybe I can just give the label based on the ID, the one I just created on my attributes table, or maybe name, something like name. And then I can just apply and then okay. And you can see that has been added here is Kayole Central because I used the name to style it up. And then you can see also the change in the color there. So that is how we do the styling up. So the next thing is actually to jump to vector data because that is a bit of an introduction to vector data. So we can now jump to raster data. So I have some raster data here with me. So let me just navigate to the folder which I have saved those raster information. So it is in desktop, training, data, and then I have some raster here, and I will just add this one. So this one is in a different place. So because it is in a different place, you will not be able to see it now. So let me just remove this first and then zoom to layer. So I'll remove that. I will say okay. So this boundary, I will also remove it and then say okay. So my DEM, I will just come here and then click zoom to layer. And you can see it is actually in a different region. This should be somewhere in the United Kingdom. So this is a raster image, which I have just added to my interface. This is different from a vector image. And if I was to use the identify button, you realize that some places with a higher elevation will have this value 271, and the ones with a lower elevation will have a value of -4, which is actually black, and this one is actually more white. So if I was to identify a place like here, you can see actually the elevation value there is actually 15. So it is somewhere between 4 and 291. It should be close to -4 there. That is why it is black. So if I was to identify some other place which is white like here, you can see that is actually 192, and the value has risen to be closer enough to 290, 291. So those values are actually values for height above the mean sea level. So this 192 is actually the height above the mean sea level. So that is my value for the DEM. And I will use this DEM to create some contours, maybe just for the purpose of you guys understanding working with raster data, we will use this information to create some contours because this is elevation data. So the first thing I will start with is styling this raster data. To style raster data, just come here to the DEM, right click, jump to properties. The same way, come to symbology, and then you will be able to come and select here single bird pseudo color. And then from here, you can select a color ramp of your own. And the good thing with QGIS, it allows you to create your new color ramp from here. And you can select maybe something like catalog, say okay, and here it will draw suggestions that will be related to your DEM. Maybe you want to do some map on, let's say something like topography. So it will give you a color ramp which is related to topography. Like in this case, I need this one for elevation. If you were to do something like precipitation, again, it will draw some color ramps that will be related to precipitation. This is very important, especially when you are doing thematic mapping. So let me select this one and then say, okay, this is the color ramp I want. So, and then I can apply that color ramp so that we can see the way it is coming up. You can see that color ramp is not having as many colors as they appear here. So I'll just come here to the mode and select something like equal interval. This one is giving me some equal interval, and let me define my classes maybe up to 6. 6 should be okay. If I was to click apply, you can see now this color ramp has been well distributed across my DEM. And you can see now my DEM is making more sense now, because the lower regions actually are inheriting a color that is related to a lake, and the higher regions are inheriting a color that is related to maybe the higher regions, maybe something like brown that is more related to higher regions. I believe that one is doing topology in a better way, that color. Okay, so that is our DEM. That is our styling up. Maybe the only other thing we need to mention here on styling up is, let me see if there's something I have left out. So maybe the only thing is maybe just playing around with the mode, the classes. Again, also maybe the histogram. If you need a histogram for elevation, maybe the Z-axis, you need to draw a histogram for that. You can do that from this other panel. Again, the information will allow you to view the coordinate reference system, the units, the wind, the height, or any other related information that is attached to this DEM. You can be able to visualize it from here. So the next thing I will cover is actually how to clip this DEM. If you were to clip it using a polygon, let me just come to this place where I have my shape files. So my shape files are here. Let me come and create a new shape file here. And then this shape file, let me call it, let me create it from here. Layer, create layer, new shapefile layer, and then I will give the name as boundary. I want to use this boundary to perform some clipping. Okay, so UTF-8 is actually my encoding method. And then if I don't select the directory here, it will be saved as a temporary file. So I can do that, and then click OK. You see, OK is not activated, so I have to do something on the fields and so on. So let me do some ID. So by default, we have a field. Let's just use this field that is drawn by default, and perhaps select a location where we will save this. So let it be saved somewhere there. So from here, we can try and add a field. Let's call this one name. Type is a text data of about 100 characters. Okay, let me add that to the list. And then the coordinate system is okay. We have selected our coordinate system. Geometric type, this is actually a polygon. Okay, and then once that is done, let me just hit OK. And then I will do the same way I was doing toggle editing. Pick the tool. Let's create some polygon around this region here. Then I can call this one maybe test, and I can give it any name. So let me call it test. So call it, oh sorry, the ID actually is actually type. QGIS does not allow me to type a text. So we have ID, we have drawn some number 12. Let me just draw one, and then the name is actually test, and then okay. So that has been added. And then once that has been added, if I was to perform some clipping, I will come to view, and then panels, ensure these processing toolbox is on. And then once it is on, let me just type here clip. So clip, and then once I type clip, I will pick the, I will come to the option for GDAL, and then clip raster by mask. So this is the one I will pick. And then input layer, I will select the DEM. And then my mask layer is the boundary. And then the source coordinate reference system, I can define it from here in the target coordinate reference system, but I will just leave those as default. And then I can save this as a temporary file, or I can just come here and navigate to a place where I want to save, to save to a file. So I'll just save it as a temporary file for now, because I will explain how to save this as a permanent file later. So I'll run, and then once the process is complete, you'll be able to see that here, but you can see this one has not completed successfully. So it means that it has thrown some kind of an error. So maybe this is because this is editable. So let me just save the edits and stop editing. So I will repeat the same process again very fast. So, and then run it. Yes, and I can see the algorithm clip raster layer has finished. So I'll just close this one, and you can see the layer that has been clipped is already there. So I can remove the initial, sorry, it's not renaming, actually it's actually removing. So remove. So I can remove it now. Now we have that kind of shapefile. What I have done now clipping for this, and you can see the styling has been lost. I have to redo it again. So the next thing is on how to derive our contours from here. So if I was to derive contours from this, I will just come to raster, then select extraction, and then contour. So then the input layer is the OSM that has been clipped, the clipped mask. And then I can give this contour some interval. Let me do an interval of, this is a small region. So let me select an interval of around, let's try something like 5. I hope 5 will not be too small. And then I can select run. Then once it has run, I'll be able to see the process complete somewhere here. So once we have these contours, we'll also do some labeling of the contours because we need these contours to be labeled because sometimes you see a contour has some label. Actually, the label is the elevation value. We will do that. We will add that label of elevation value towards the end. Okay, so this is 75% complete. It is taking time. It will be able to complete in a moment. So looks like it is complete now. So I just close, and I can see contours has been checked. So if I was to uncheck this one and check my contours, you can see the way these contours have appeared with an interval of 5. So 5 was very small. Okay, so 5 was actually very small, but you can see the contours have drawn, and they are actually contours, and they should have some labels with them. You should be able to see some labels, but we have not added them yet. So if I was to do some labels for those contours, how would I do that? So it is very simple. I'll just come to the contours, right click, go to properties, and then come to labels here, select single labels from here. And then once that is open, I will label by the field on elevation. So this elevation is actually a field in the attributes table that is going to give me elevation data. So if I was to open the attributes table, maybe let me just quickly open the attributes table for the contours. So if I was to open that attributes table, you can see the elevation values have been drawn here in this column of elevation. That is the column we are going to use to label our contour. So once I'm on labels, single labels, I will label by elevation. So let me just label by elevation. I can leave everything here as default. This is just the normal text styling. And then I will just click OK. And you can see those contour values have been added. Actually, you can see this contour has a value of 45. This one has a value of 40. This one has a value of 60, 65. And you can see the increases, they go inwards, and the decreases, they go downwards this way. So that is how you can add the contours. And if I was to use the identify tool to identify this contour here, you can see actually the elevation value there is 65, just as it is labeled there. So that is how you can label contours once you have added them. And again, remember we saved these contours as a temporary file. So for us to be able to save this as a permanent file, a file which I can navigate using this browser and get to it, just click on contours, right click, come to export, and then select Save Features S. So you will save as Esri shapefile. Select from this, just select an Esri shapefile because you are actually saving it as a shapefile. You can give it a name here. Let me just call it contours. And because I have already one, let me just give an one there in front just to distinguish the name. And I can navigate to the location where I want to save it. In this case, it is desktop, shapefile, and then click yes. And then from here, I can change the coordinate system and coding methods and the rest, but I'll just leave this as default. And then once that is done, you will be able to see something here. And that has been added as a layer here is actually a permanent file. So if I was to navigate to shape files, you can see my contours have added here. So I can see contours somewhere here. So I don't know if I should refresh this. So let me come to view, panels, and then browser. Then I come to shape files. Yes, I can see contours are right there. So the contours have been added now as a permanent layer. So if I was to come to this layer on symbology, I can also style it the way I want, just the normal way we style. I can also label it if it is not labeled. For some reason, it may not be labeled, especially when you save it as a permanent. You realize there are now two. Maybe this one was labeled, this one is not. And again, you can be able to access the information of this from here. So that is what we were supposed to cover today. And we have successfully covered working with Raster with vector data in QGIS, installing that plugin, creating new vector data, styling and exporting these vector files, and working with rasters in QGIS. We have covered that, and thank you very much for following up to the end. We will continue with this QGIS lesson, and we will do more projects in QGIS in the later series.